All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Maddie here. I missed uploading yesterday. I've been very sick, so I apologize if I sound a little bit off in today's video, but what we're going to do today is take a look at all of this surprising, really interesting decks that did well in online tournaments throughout this entire week. Really excited about this because I think that at this point, we're like 3-4 weeks into this metagame. There's a lot of opportunities for kind of, interesting decks that are a little bit outside the norm to, pop up and do very well in online competitions. Not only that, but Ranked is releasing tonight, or I guess tomorrow, which is very exciting. So we have our new Ranked season. Excuse me. That'll be very, very fun. We'll get back to doing some live streams, and then of course, we'll kind of return to our video series of the best decks for Ranked battles tomorrow is what we're going to cover on the channel. But yeah, let's just dive right into it. Before we get into all of the awesome decks in today's video, you got to go register for PMPT number 16. Another awesome tournament this weekend. We have $300 cash in the prize pool. It will be live streamed Saturday and Sunday. I definitely recommend that you guys go and register. Link down in the description below to go and register and play in PMPT number 6. I am definitely still very sick, but hopefully, I don't sound too rough in this video. I apologize if I sound not great in today's video, but let's get right into it. The first deck we're going to take a look at is from Illuchin's pop-up tournament, and this is going to be JKSU, I don't know, from the Philippines. He was playing this Magnezone Ditto deck that was really cool. We have a lot of different decks to show in this video, so we're probably going to go pretty quickly. But this is a very interesting deck. I think that the new Magnezone package is just really good, and I think you can play it in like a million different ways. So this deck list here is actually using Ditto when paired with Magnezone, and I think Ditto actually kind of makes some sense, right? Magnezone, it doesn't really matter what energy type you're playing, and the cool thing is that in some online tournaments, not in our online tournament series, but in some tournament series, they don't actually have you submit like a particular energy type for your deck list, right? You just sort of submit the cards, and then you can kind of play whatever energy type you want. So Magnezone being completely independent from, whatever energy type you're playing in the deck list, Ditto allows you to kind of choose which energy type you're going to play depending on your opponent's deck, and then you can use Ditto to copy your opponent's attack. So it's a very clever strategy. We've actually seen Dittos be pretty relevant, actually, a number of different times in online tournaments. So this is not something that I would necessarily recommend. However, in some metagames, like right now, there's a lot of Suicune going around, a lot of water type decks. You could potentially just run water type energies in this deck. And and then utilize Ditto's attack to copy things like Suicune and Greninja. So I really do like Ditto, and I think that the only thing holding it back is that you don't really know what energy type your opponent's using, and that's what Ditto does. It copies your opponent's attack, but you need the correct energy type. So of course, like in our tournament, for an example, you have to submit the energy types for your deck list. So Ditto wouldn't necessarily work. Like I kind of consider that like a little bit cheating. There's no real reason to ever need to do that other than Ditto, but also some decks we just like to know what energy types people are playing. But this is an example where I assume they did not have to submit their energy types, and somebody utilized Ditto with Magnezone and the sort of universal, like non-energy attack costs that Magnezone has, right? Because it can generate its own lightning energies with Magneton. We're playing Chingling, and then we're also playing one copy of Unknown with Check. So once during your turn, you may show either what is this? What is this? Once during your turn, you may choose either player, look at the top card of that player's deck. So this is really funny. It basically shows you what the top card of either you or your opponent's deck is, which is really kind of valuable information. And it's just sort of a bench-sitting Pokemon. It doesn't do anything other than that. And then one copy of Chingling. This was just a really fun deck, and I really did like this. So again, in a format where you can kind of choose which energy type you want to play in your deck, depending on what your opponent is, this is a really, really smart strategy. So I just really wanted to highlight this. And again, Magnezone doesn't really care what energy types you play, and neither does Chingling or Unknown. So a really cool deck. Shout out to, what is this, Jay? He went 8-2-1, by the way, at Illuchin's pop-up tournament. And shout out to Illuchin, one of my favorite players, one of my favorite content creators and streamers for Pokemon Pocket. He's absolutely incredible, and this deck list is super cool. So shout out to this player. Next up at the Storms Wednesday night clash was Kevin O from Mexico. He was playing Mega Venusaur, and he actually got first place, I believe, at this tournament. Absolutely incredible run that this player had, at least in day 2 when undefeated. And yeah, it's Mega Venusaur, and I think that, typically this video series that we do every week is like an off-meta showcase. It's like decks that aren't necessarily considered meta. I think that Venusaur is kind of on the in-between, and since this was like a 200-player tournament that Venusaur got first place in, I thought it was kind of relevant relevant to discuss in this video, even though we've talked about Venusaur before. And this is sort of the way that people are playing Venusaur these days. Only one Bulbasaur, and then 2 Ivysaur, 2 Mega Venusaur, and then nothing else. Some people play Chingling, but this is kind of becoming the more popular version, and this is a deck list that is very, very good into Suicune and Greninja. That is sort of the big calling card for Mega Venusaur, is that it wins that matchup pretty reliably, which is pretty cool. 2 Lily and 1 Erica's, tons of healing in the deck. We even have a Repel. Again, if you guys remember that Repel and Sabrina, 1 copy of either in this deck list. Those are really good cards into Suicune, especially in the early game. Big Malasada, which is really funny, I guess, is really just here to heal a special condition, but also heals a little bit of damage. It's a very interesting card, but I guess they just wanted to throw something into this deck list. We are playing 1 Giovanni and then 1 Heavy Helmet as well, so Heavy Helmet to reduce the damage from Mega Venusaur. Even 1 Pokemon Center Lady, 1 Copycat. So this deck's got a bunch of different things in here. A very interesting deck. But at the end of the day, all that matters is getting this Venusaur online, or getting our Ivysaur online on our second turn, attacking with Synthesis, generating those energies, hopefully staying alive, and then, of course, going into Mega Venusaur. Now, Heavy Helmet here works for Ivysaur, which is pretty cool because Ivysaur has a retreat cost of 3, right? So if we Heavy Helmet onto the Ivysaur, then it takes 20 less damage from attacks, which is pretty strong. Reliably, you're not getting 1-hit KO in most scenarios, right? There's not that many decks other than things like, I don't know, maybe Hydreigon or something like that that's going to be able to hit you on 130 for turn 2. Maybe Blaziken, right, if they go second. So those are the only scenarios where this deck list probably is a little bit scary, for sure. But we do have ways to combat that, and that's what I think the Sabrina and the Repel is kind of all about. If you know your opponent might pop off on turn 2, what you can do is kind of push them out of the active spot early in the game, and then, buy yourself that extra turn. So Mega Venusaur is very strong. It loses pretty hard to some matchups, but beats Suicune very consistently, and I think that's actually really cool. So I wanted to highlight this deck, again, just because it did get first place at a pretty large tournament this week, so that's what this video series is all about, is highlighting these players, these decks, and these tournaments that aren't necessarily, from our own, portion of the community, right? Quick Growth Extract, because why not? You know what I mean? It's just going to make your evolutions a little bit more reliable. This is a very strong card. We don't have a lot of great grass-type Pokemon in the game to use Quick Growth Extract, but this is a very strong card, and we likely will see this card see a lot of play in the future. So again, big shout out to Kevin from the Storms Wednesday Night Clash, first place, which is pretty cool. Next up, also from the Storms Wednesday Night Clash, is going to be Momo Nagi from France, and he was playing Greninja Oricorio, another deck that I think is kind of slept on. A deck that I believe Jimbo played multiple times to our tournament series, and it's a deck list that, again, is very counter to Suicune and Greninja. He went 9-3-1 at the same tournament, and this is a deck that's very simple. Excuse me. Very, very simple here. Just playing, 2 Greninja, 2 Oricorio, 2 Zeraora. And I believe if we go back, does it signify the energy type in the deck? It doesn't, but typically this deck plays just only lightning energy, and you attack with Oricorio and Zeraora. The fast-paced attack from Zeraora, being able to attack in your second turn, whether you're going first or second, is really good into Suicune. It does 2-hit KO with weakness, which is cool. And then, of course, Oricorio, which is a very valuable Pokemon, and then just Greninja on the back end. And this deck has gotten a lot more consistent with the inclusions of Copycat. So a very interesting control type deck. There's some matchups where this deck is never going to be able to win, but into Suicune Greninja, it actually has a very consistent high win rate, which is pretty cool. So a couple of really anti-Suicune decks really early in this video, but these are decks that you can bring to tournaments, or early in this ranked season when the ranked opens up. These are decks that might be pretty viable, considering a lot of people are going to be playing Suicune in this new ranked season. Now, that is something that I'm pretty confident in. We're going to see a lot of Suicune, so these sort of counter Suicune decks are likely going to be pretty relevant. But big shout out to him. Nothing else to really say here. It's something we've seen before, but I just did want to showcase this to let you know that people have been playing this deck. So very, very cool. Next up, also at the Storms Wednesday Night Clash, is going to be Raphael, and this is that Mega Altaria Silvally deck that I, of course, made a video on a couple of days ago. So it's basically the exact same deck. I don't think anything's really changed here. Yeah, it looks to be the exact same deck, and I really, really love this deck. I think it's just very, very consistent and extremely strong going second, right? So this is a deck where, if you're going second, like turn 2 Mega Altaria or turn 2 Silvally is very, very, very strong. I think Silvally is massively underrated. There's not that many Pokemon you really want to pair with Silvally, but this is a deck list that I think does it very, very well. Theoretically speaking, you could play the 2 Silvally lineup, 2 Chingling lineup with like any other Pokemon to kind of be like the back end to end games. I think Mega Altaria is just such a consistent card that it kind of fits very well in here, but you could replace Mega Altaria with virtually anything. I just think Mega Altaria is really good, which is why we're kind of pairing it here. Yeah, I really do love this deck list, and I think that there's a ton of potential here, and I think Silvally deserves some more play. So if you want to see some more gameplay, or if you want to see just like about this deck in more detail, then go check out our video from Tuesday where we played this deck, and it went pretty well. It's a deck list that I actually really like, and I would recommend that you guys go and test it out. So here's just one example of it doing well at a tournament this week, 8-3 Raphael. But the average win rate for this deck in online tournaments over the last week or two has been very, very high, so it's something to keep our eye on. Anyway, big shout out to Raphael in Storm's Wednesday night. Next up here is going to be Jimbomancer from the Dark League tournament. He was playing Magnezone Oricorio, but with Chingling. And again, this isn't really, anything too crazy here, but it is just sort of an example of Magnezone being played with Chingling and Oricorio. And what was interesting here is that he's actually playing, sort of the Clement's Backpack, the new Magneton version, which is definitely an interesting way to play Magnezone Oricorio, but it is an alternate way to play it that I think, the developers of Pokemon Pocket really intended us to maybe try out, right? It's just a different way to play Magnezone. It's a much more aggressive, fast-paced version of it. We can go turn 2 Magneton Spark. We can increase that damage that we're dealing to the active spot by a lot, which is pretty cool. But actually, the Clement's Backpack card here, if you read this, it's 20 damage to your opponent's Pokemon in general. So it's not actually signifying the active spot, which means that this Magneton card, which does 20 to the active and 20 to the bench, gets buffed both ways by Clement's Backpack. So, if we play 1 or 2 Clement's Backpack, we're now all of a sudden we're doing 60 to the active and 60 to the bench. It's a really strong, aggressive card here, especially with one Cyrus in the deck. I really do like it. And with Lissy, of course, we're able to search our deck for the Magnemites and the Chinglings. So Clement to search our deck for Magneton. And then, of course, on the back line, like we have Chingling and Oricorio, which are cards that, of course, are going to be valuable in a lot of different matchups. This is a unique deck list, and I like it because Chingling and Oricorio are like the 2 control type cards in the game. They're the cards that really limit our opponent's ability to do things. So when you're pairing both of them in the deck list, you kind of have some ability to be pretty strong, right? Chingling with Magnezone, so we can slow down our opponent, even if we're not going to be using Oricorio, and even if we're not even going to be doing sort of the aggressive Magneton strategy. What we can do is just sort of manually attach to Magnezone while Chingling is sort of putting on the item lock, right? So we have some opportunities to do that as well. It's just a really strong deck, right? And if Magneton does live an attack, there's nothing that says we can't just evolve Magneton on the following turn, right? We can get that really strong Clement's Backpack Spark attack off and then go right into Mirror Shot Magnezone. So it's a very different approach to Oricorio Magnezone, but I still think that Oricorio Magnezone is a premier strategy in Pokemon Pocket, and it's a really interesting version of this deck that we don't really see often, so I wanted to highlight this. Shout out to Jimbomancer, a very creative deck, utilizing some of these new tools that they gave us in Crimson Blaze that maybe haven't seen that much play. Shout out to the Dark League tournament. Next up, also from the Dark League tournament, is going to be Salomanda from Germany, 8-3-1. He was playing Mega Absol, Nihilego, and Indeedee, and that's it, which is a very interesting deck, right? So I don't know the entire concept here. I believe the concept is to just sort of go into Mega Absol with Poison Barbs and double Indeedees to kind of stay alive and deal maybe some additional damage, right? So the thing about Mega Absol is that the effect of the attack is very, very strong. It's a very strong effect, but the damage is a little bit lackluster, especially into other Mega Pokemon that maybe can live like 2 or 3 attacks, which is kind of crazy. But with Nihilego and Poison Barbs, we can kind of remove that from being much of a factor, right? So double Indeedee plus Pokemon Center Lady, it actually is very interesting. We even play a Traveling Merchant in the deck to pull tool cards out of our deck, which is pretty cool. So another deck list that just utilizes cards that don't see play commonly in the current metagame, right? When Serena in the deck, people have asked me about Serena. There's not a lot of reasons why you would ever need to play Sabrina, but this is kind of one example of where maybe playing Sabrina or Serena in your deck is a good decision, because we don't necessarily want Mega Absol to be in the active spot like immediately, but the cool thing here is that we can kind of use Nihilego as an attacking option. So maybe we just sort of keep a Nihilego in the active spot with Poison Barb, and then maybe we attach to Mega Absol on the back end, put Indeedees on our bench, so maybe we can take a KO with Nihilego, or maybe just kind of deal a little bit of damage before we go into Mega Absol. It's an interesting deck. It's an interesting strategy. Not something that to me is like readily apparent. It's not something I would necessarily think to do. But Mega Absol going second is a very strong leadoff option, right? I mean, turn 2 Darkness Claw is honestly can win you games sometimes in certain matchups. So we even have a Giant Cape as well. Double Pokemon Center Lady, double Indeedee to deal a bunch. It's a bunch of healing. That's a lot. I mean, it's like 70 healing in one turn. That's a lot. 170 HP HP on Mega Absol. It's a fun deck. It's an interesting deck, not something I would really ever consider to play, but somebody thought about it, right? Salamander from Germany, he thought about it. He went 8-3-1. So very interesting deck. Again, not something that you really see very often. We see Mega Absol all of the time, but this is just sort of a version that, I haven't seen too much of. I played a version of this deck with like Chinglings and Nihilegos, but this deck is playing Indeedee instead of that. So very cool. Very interesting deck list. Very interesting. Next up here, also at Illuchin's pop-up tournament is Moonwalker, and he was playing Mega Lopunny and Hitmonchan. So, I know some people really do like Hitmonchan, and Hitmonchan is a pretty good card, but it hasn't seen that much play. So here's just one example of a Mega Lopunny deck that did very well recently. This week, there's a couple of examples of Mega Lopunny doing well. It's not the most popular card, doesn't have the most, highest average win rate, but it is something that can win games pretty commonly, right? So the whole concept here, I think, is that we just have a myriad of lead-off options, right, between Hitmontop, Tyrogue, and Hitmonchan. These are all, fine Pokemon that we like to start the game with, and then, once they go down, we go into Mega Lopunny, and there we go. And the cool thing about Hitmontop and Hitmonchan and Tyrogue is that they all have low energy attack costs, right? So if they can stick around for a turn or two, we can get the energies on Mega Lopunny. We have Rocky Helmets to increase the damage. It's just a pretty fun deck list, honestly. I think Mega Lopunny has a lot of potential. I kind of wish that the coin flip effect on its attack was like, you were guaranteed to deal 90, but if you flipped heads, it was like 60 more or something more like Pinsir. It's unfortunate that Mega Lopunny has the potential to not deal any damage. It really just makes this deck feel, way a little bit too much RNG in my mind. Like Mega Lopunny was so close to being really, really good. I think they just made it a little bit too like RNG dependent. At least we are guaranteed to get the confusion from Mega Lopunny. But yeah, this deck has a little bit of everything, right? I mean, Tyrogue can attack for 0 energies. Hitmontop can target a bench, and then we can bring that up with Cyrus, or we can just use Hitmonchan to deal a decent amount of damage because it has 130 HP, so it can live in attack for most things, especially with Rocky Helmet. It's interesting. Definitely an interesting deck. And I think that the fighting archetype right now is like super close. Like the fighting type in Pokemon Pocket is really, really close to being like really meta and viable. It's just, it's missing just a little bit of like support or just a couple of cards that could help it out. But here's an example of Mega Lopunny that did well at a recent tournament. Big shout out to Moonwalker and Illuchin's pop-up tournament. Next up at the Showdown Mega Tuesday, number 4 is Aqua Derp. And this is an example of Jolteon, which again, I think has been kind of thriving a little bit recently. Jolteon is not a bad card. And this is just an example of how some people have been playing Jolteon more recently. So 2 boosted evolution EV and then 1 EV EX. In fact, I've even seen some people not play any EVX and just play 2 of the boosted evolution Jolteons or EVs. You definitely want boosted evolution more just because like getting that Jolteon EX in the active on your first turn is a really big deal. And it's also really, really cool with that beginning Bolt Jolteon, one of the more underrated sort of aggressive things that we've had in Pokemon Pocket like ever. This is kind of the strongest turn 1 Pokemon that we've ever had, especially going second. If you think about it, the turn you evolve beginning Bolt Jolteon, this attack does 60 damage. And that's enough to KO like any basic Pokemon that like evolves, right? Things like Froakie, things like Dino, things like Charmander, like all of these different cards just get KO'd at 60 damage. So being able to attack with beginning Bolt Jolteon, excuse me, potentially on your first turn is a really, really big deal because like that's a lot of pacing. Even though if you're only dealing 40 damage after that, it's a really big deal. And of course, Jolteon EX is a really strong, aggressive Pokemon. So this is a deck that kind of realistically has kind of made its name being strong into Suicune. Being lightning type and being aggressive are kind of the two things that you kind of need to have a winning matchup into Suicune Greninja, and Jolteon kind of fits that bill. So this is just sort of one example of a Jolteon deck doing well, but we had multiple Jolteon decks, making day 2 at multiple different tournaments. It really is sort of that nice like B tier deck that's been floating around ever since it was released. And I think it's cool. It's interesting to me because, a lot of people complain about Suicune Greninja, and it is, I think, the best deck in the game, but we have so many strong cards in Pokemon Pocket that are strong into Suicune Greninja. We have all of the grass decks like Venusaur and Decidueye. You got the aggressive lightning type decks like Jolteon and Tapu-koko. You got Oricorio and Greninja and Zeraora. And then you also have, I'm spacing on stuff, but we have Chingling, like, so you can Chingling lock to stop the Greninjas. Like, there's a lot you can do for Suicune, and Jolteon's just sort of one of those decks. So I'm kind of really curious to see what we get in the next season, like when B2 releases, because I think there's going to be a lot of really strong cards that release in B2. But for now, there really is like a lot of different options to counter Suicune, I think. But anyway, big shout out to Aqua Derp, shout out to Jolteon, shout out to Showdown Mega Tuesday. Very, very cool. Next up here is going to be Supreme13, who was playing Garchomp Rampardos, went 8-2-1 or 8-1-2 at that Showdown Mega Tuesday tournament. Really interesting. You know, people, I think, remember Garchomp. It was pretty relevant not that long ago. One of the first decks that really was able to utilize Rare Candy when Rare Candy came out. And it's been somewhat meta ever since. Lightning type isn't necessarily something we're looking to counterplay very often, but Rampardos is a broken card. The only downside to Rampardos, I think, nowadays is that the Skull Fossils can't be played if you're under the Chingling item lock, because they are item cards until you play them under your bench, which is a little bit disappointing. That Chingling can kind of stop you from benching those fossils, but we have Furfrou now included in here just as a strong leadoff option. We got double Rare Candy, we have one Gabite. It's just Garchomp. It's Garchomp Rampardos, you know, as we've kind of known it ever since it's been out. So I think Garchomp's a card that kind of just people forgot about. You know, I think that when Megas came out, you know, some of these like stage 2 EX non-Mega cards really kind of fell to the wayside. But, you know, if you can get that Garchomp out early, linear attack is a single energy attack, and it is very strong, 50 to any one of your opponent's Pokemon. This is definitely a fairly sound strategy. Garchomp is still a threat and probably deserves to see a little bit more play than it has, you know, over the last like couple of months. You know what I mean? So shout out to Garchomp because, you know, I love it. I really do. So shout out to Supreme13 for bringing Garchomp back, having a good run with it. You know, try it out, honestly, because if anyone can go 8-1-2 in a tournament with Garchomp, that means it's probably somewhat viable, realistically. And I think Pokemon Pocket has so many cards in the game that there's likely a bunch of Pokemon that actually aren't that bad. It's just, you know, they maybe haven't really caught on in this sort of new season of Pokemon Pocket. But anyway, shout out to Garchomp. Next up, Fede Faril from Italy at the Showdown Mega Tuesday yet again was playing Mega Blaziken and Magnezone. Went 8-2, by the way. A very interesting deck. Not something that you'll really ever see, but yeah, it is literally just Mega Blaziken mixed with Magnezone, right? You might think like, why, right? Like, what are we doing? But, you know, against other slow decks, like Magnezone can kind of just do its thing. You know, oftentimes you're just letting whatever's in the active spot go down because we're playing double Torchic, double Magnemite. So at the end of the day, like whatever's in the active spot is just going to sit there, and we're just going to set up a Magnezone on our bench, set up a Mega Blaziken on our bench, and then just make them go through a Magnezone and a Blaziken. And that typically is enough to win games, right? So even though you're probably just going to sacrifice whatever's in the active spot, this is kind of a cool deck list, and I kind of do like it. Yeah, at the end of the day, you know, Magnezone here can set itself up with Magneton, and Blaziken only has a 2 energy attack cost. So, you know, theoretically, even if we are just sacrificing one Pokemon to lead the game, you know, having to go through a Magnezone and a Mega Blaziken is a lot. That's a lot to deal with. And even though these are all evolution Pokemon, you know, we're playing Clement, we're playing Copycat, Research as Pokeballs to kind of move through our deck, and we can utilize Lily, which is fun, right? Because both of these Pokemon are stage 2 Pokemon. Kind of something to think about, right? Magnezone is a broken card, very flexible. Why not just kind of play it with Blaziken, right? I don't know if anybody's ever thought about that. I don't think I ever did, but 8-2 is a very good record in a very, very interesting deck. I mean, is this what you expected in today's video? Probably not. I didn't expect this at all, but that's what this video is really all about. I'm very sick, so I got to wrap up this video. Next up here at Fraps Drinkers Monday Meta is Sneak Attack, who was playing Crobat. Yeah, and you know what? I like Crobat. Crobat EX is kind of in the same vein as something like a Garchomp, right? But this is a very high rolly type card, 6-1-1 at this tournament. You know, Crobat has 1 energy in its attack cost. With Nihilegos, like this is still a very, very, you know, promising high roll type card. 170 HP as well. Not very easy to KO this thing, especially with a giant cape. But the whole concept here is that, yeah, if we go turn 2 Rare Candy into Venomous Slash, 70 damage with the poison plus Nihilegos, like it's going to lead to a lot of damage. It's a very aggressive card. And even if we don't get Crobat out that early, at least we have Chinglings to kind of, you know, buffer that early game. So it's a very interesting strategy. I really think Crobat is one of the more slept on Pokemon in the entire game. It's been slept on ever since it kind of came out. But now I think with things like Copycat, with May, with Lycia, with Chingling, there's a lot of extra consistency that you can kind of package into the beginning of this deck at the beginning of games, just because Crobat to me is definitely like, it's really strong if you can get it out, but you can't always get it out, right? So I like this. Like we're playing 8 Pokemon in the deck. We're playing May, so maybe if we lead with Chingling and we have like a Zubat and a Nihilego, you can play May and then swap the Nihilego for a Crobat and Rare Candy into it, or vice versa. It's a sound strategy, and I really think Crobat's underrated. So, you know, it's seen a little bit of play. It's just not something that's really caught on, but I really do think this is probably better than people give it credit for. So, you know, shout out to Sneak Attack, shout out to Fraps Drinkers Tournament. Crobat, I love Crobat, one of my favorite cards in the entire game. And like I said, you know, Pokemon Pocket's been out for so long, we have so many strong cards in the game that just honestly don't really see that much play. Next up, at the PMPT 15 tournament this past weekend is Numatanale. He went 8-3, so he made day 2, and he was playing Mega Lopunny with Greninja. This is a deck that I wanted to highlight on Meta Monday, but we really only talked about the decks in top 16. So yeah, this is one of my favorite decks from the tournament. In fact, the only reason he didn't make it farther into the tournament is because the RNG really caught up to him, and he had a couple of games that were so unlucky. You can go and watch our day 2 live stream if you want to watch that match. But yeah, in that best of 3 match, he got so extraordinarily unlucky that, you know, there just wasn't any opportunity for him to win the game. And that's, again, what Mega Lopunny comes down to, right? You can get lucky and pop off, or you can get astronomically unlucky and have a 0% chance to win games. And that's the downside to Mega Lopunny, is sometimes it literally does nothing. But yeah, I mean, Greninja, Mega Lopunny, him on top. I mean, the strategy here is sound. Like it's a sound strategy. Greninja's broken with Cyrus. And the thing with Mega Lopunny, most people play it with Will, but you don't really have to play it with Will, right? Greninja plus Rocky Helmets with Mega Lopunny really adds a lot of extra damage to where, you know, you don't really need to guarantee that 90 damage with Will or possibly increase your odds for that 180. This is a deck that kind of just, you know, loves to deal bench damage or just kind of damage the active spot with Greninja, right? And then with the Rocky Helmet, we're kind of just dealing a lot of extra damage, and Mega Lopunny has Confusion, so it's another layer of RNG. Just a funny way to play this deck. Greninja is so strong, you can pair it with basically anything, and it does kind of make sense with Mega Lopunny. So I wanted to highlight this deck. Shout out to Numatanale. Again, he did make day 2 at PMPT number 15. Next up is going to be SC Crusher, also made day 2, 8-3 at PMPT 15 this past weekend. Another deck that we didn't highlight on Meta Monday, he was playing Tapu-koko Zeraora. And again, a bit of a throwback, right? You guys will remember this deck as one of those just really aggressive lightning type decks, kind of before Jolteon came out, that was good into Suicune and Greninja, right? Tapu-koko going second is kind of broken. It's like very, very good into Suicune Greninja. You lead off with Plasma Hurricane, which does 20, but just into a Suicune or into a Froakie or whatever, it does 40 damage with weakness. And then you immediately can go into Mach Bolt 90, which is actually 110 with weakness. So you can 2-hit KO a Suicune really easily. Very, very aggressive. If you don't lead Tapu-koko, you can lead Zeraora, which effectively does the same thing. We have repels, or we have 1 repel in the deck rather, but it's, you know, it's just an aggressive lightning type deck. I think most people right now have kind of shifted towards the Jolteon decks in terms of like aggro lightning decks, but Tapu-koko Zeraora was sort of the first one. And you also got to keep in mind Giovanni, right? So Zeraora Giovanni, that's 60 damage, KOs a lot of different basics. So, you know, Zeraora, very underrated, very, very underrated. It's one of the best cards into Suicune Greninja, and it'll likely remain relevant as we kind of go into B2. I don't know if we're going to get some new strong lightning type Pokemon, but I guarantee you Zeraora is going to remain relevant if Suicune's relevant, because it's just a strong card. Yeah, Tapu-koko, a bit underrated as well. I don't know if this is better than Jolteon, like overall, but it is very interesting and likely will still be strong into Suicune and Greninja, so wanted to highlight it. Big shout out to SC Crusher 18 for getting day 2 at PMPT 15. And now to end the video is going to be Ting 100000146 from Taiwan. Also made day 2 at PMPT 15. He lost in round 1 of day 2, but he was playing Mega Charizard Y, but he was playing it with Turtonator. A very interesting deck list, and I wanted to highlight this deck because it's very cool. It's definitely not a deck list that you'll see very commonly, but, you know, again, if you take a look at this, right? He went 6-2, made day 2, and you know, he actually won in top 128, which is pretty funny, but lost to Suicune. So a pretty decent run for this deck list, and this is definitely not the most common version of Charizard that you'll see, but it's Turtonator and Kiawe, which is super cool, right? I mean, you guys remember Turtonator Kiawe from back in the day? Basically, Kiawe allows you to generate double energies to Turtonator, but you end your turn after you play it. But, you know, if you use this on your first turn, it's really quite strong. Turtonator does 90 damage with 120 HP. So if you can't get that early game Kiawe out, like, it's actually kind of an aggressive Pokemon. And then, of course, the extra energies we can kind of, you know, pick up with Charmeleon. You can Flame Patch. So it's actually pretty easy to get the energies on Turtonator and then kind of finish the game with Mega Charizard Y. So very fun. Honestly, I think that the Charmeleon stuff is really strong. I think Charmeleon's a strong card. There just isn't a lot of reasons or opportunities to play Charmeleon other than, of course, if you're playing Mega Charizard. But the Ignition ability is a strong ability. Very, very strong. Anything that can generate additional energies is really strong. So this is more of a Turtonator deck than anything, but I think that's really cool, honestly. I think that Turtonator, Kiawe, Charmeleon plus Flame Patch, it's a lot of extra energies running around. Kind of makes Turtonator, you know, a little bit more viable than you might think it is. You know what I mean? Something to test out, something to, you know, something to try out maybe. Who knows? I don't know. Shout out to Turtonator. Yeah, there you go. There's Ting's deck from PNPT 15 in the last deck of the video that we're going to take a look at. So there we go, guys. A lot of different decks that we highlighted today, but you know, I was out yesterday. I've been really, really sick the last few days. I'm still very, very sick, but I wanted to get a video out today. Like I said, you know, PNPT number 16 is actually this Saturday. You should definitely go and register for it. But also ranked battles are releasing tonight at like 1 a.m. On Friday, January 9th. So we should be able to do some live streams soon, especially if I feel better, which I'm excited about. I haven't gone live myself on the channel very much just because there hasn't been ranked. And, you know, of course, I've been very busy with the tournament series and whatnot, but we'll get back into the ranked grind. This ranked season's going to last a couple of weeks. I think it's about 2 weeks and some change. So it's going to be a shortened ranked season, but it'll lead pretty nicely right into, of course, B2, which we should, I think is releasing at the end of January. So, you know, by the time the ranked season is about to wrap up, we'll probably get an announcement for B2, and then we'll kind of dive right into all of the speculation and theory crafting for that new set. So I think a lot of people are definitely, you know, like we're waiting. We're in the waiting room right now for Pokemon Pocket, right? There's just not much really happening other than like the online tournaments. So ranked coming back and then leading into B2, I think is going to be really healthy for the game. Just gives us an opportunity to actually play the game, which is always a really good thing, right? We just want to play Pokemon Pocket and have a reason to play. Anyway, guys, let's wrap up this video here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys. We'll be back tomorrow for the best decks for ranked battles, which you know, should be interesting as well. So peace out, guys. We'll see you guys later. Have a good one. And yeah. Bye.